Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels. This week we're out in the garden and we're going to be looking at apple pruning, and we're also going to be making sure the birds are fed and watered. Over the spring and summer we want to look at growing fruit and vegetables in more detail, and hopefully we're going to show you lots of different ways that you can grow them in your garden. One of the things I like to grow in my garden are fruit trees, especially apples. I think they're lovely. Freshly picked apples or stored apples that you can eat over the winter are just wonderful. And I grow quite a few around the garden. Lots of people think you've got to have a big garden to grow an apple tree, and that's not true. You can grow them on a dwarf rootstock so they stay nice and small. You can grow them in containers, and we'll do a potted plant later on in the spring. Or you can grow train varieties, stepovers, cordons, espaliers. And this is a stepover here. And a stepover is called such because you can step over it. They were grown by the Victorian gardeners exactly as I'm growing them here around the edge of their vegetable gardens. And basically what it is a short trunk there that's been grafted onto a rootstock, and the two branches that grow from it are taken out horizontally, tied to a wire while they're training them until they get nice and thick and support themselves. And with this type of pruning we tend to do mainly summer pruning. We cut back the long growths to get these short stubby growths that we call spurs, and it's on these that we get the fruit buds, and then we get the blossom and the fruit later this year. So there's not an awful lot to do to this at this time of the year because I did the pruning back in August and September, but this is getting quite old and gnarled now. So what I do occasionally is come along and just look at it. If I think it's getting a little bit too thick and too congested, I will do just a little bit of thinning out. So where two of these have made shoots here and we can see we're very congested, I'm just going to thin one or two of them out just to reduce it slightly and cut this one back here, because if we don't, it just gets bigger and bigger every year. And that's not going to do any harm because we've still got lots and lots of fruit buds lower down there that will give us a crop this summer. So I would work my way along there, just really a tidy up, and then obviously they can all be disposed of, and that is it. We don't do anything more to that until later on in the summer. But now we'll go down into the orchard where we can look at some of the larger trees. So this is probably the more traditional type of tree that you'd expect in a garden. This is a sort of half standard or bush apple. These are on semi-dwarfing rootstocks, so they're not going to get too big. They're not going to get to 20-30 feet or anything silly like that. I aim to keep these at about 7 or 8 feet, so that I don't need a step ladder to be able to pick the fruit off them. And the secret with a tree like this is to keep it nice and open in the centre, which is exactly what we've done on this tree. We've got a framework of branches that go out to give us that goblet shape, but the centre is nice and free, so we get lots of air circulation in there. That helps to prevent pests and diseases from building up in there. It gets air blowing through it. I do some summer pruning. In fact, we did it together on Pots and Trowels again back in August, where we shortened a lot of the long growth. But at this time of the year, we can do a little bit more structural pruning just to make sure it's in shape. So if the branch is too thick for secateurs, you're going to need loppers. If it's too thick for loppers, then you'll need a small pruning saw. What I'd be aiming to do, first of all, is to take out anything that's damaged or dead. There doesn't appear to be anything on this tree. We take out weak branches that are probably rubbing together or crossing, and then I would stand back and look at it and maybe just do a little bit more thinning out to keep the structure there, but just to reduce it a little bit each year so we can get replacement growth in there. If we see here, look, we've got these branches that are crossing. This one is eventually going to rub on that and it's going to get very congested. So I need to make a decision which one to prune out of these. I'm actually going to take this one out just here. I'm going to prune it right back to the stem, so that frees that up a little bit, and then I've got a little dead stub on there and I'm going to shorten this one there, so it just opens up that area there. Likewise, if we go around here, it's all getting a little bit congested and twiggy in the middle, so I'm going to cut some back. Now when I cut back, I'm not going to take this one all the way back. I'm going to cut it to this bud here. This is a really big fat bud there. These big fat buds are going to be the blossom and the fruit. So if I just cut that back to there, basically it's a form of spur pruning, and it just means that we'll still get some fruit within there. Any little bits that are growing into the centre we can take off completely just to open it up a little bit. Any little snags like this one, again more crossing branches up there, growing into the centre. This one again is going to grow there and cause a problem, so we can cut that one quite back. So there's no real rules, we're just doing a little bit of thinning out, but the thing you must never do is to go in with the saw and start hacking it hard back, because that will cut off all the fruiting buds for next year, and then of course it will encourage even more growth, and the tree will get bigger and bigger. So this is just little bits of maintenance pruning as we go round. What I don't like about these branches here, these are in the way now, these are being pruned back. So what I'm going to do is to take these off completely, so that it gives us a bit more of a clear stem, and the same with this one just here. Take those off with the secateurs, pop those down there, that one in there. It is just a case of walking round the tree. We've got one over there that's doing a strange thing. As you can see, I'm just trying to keep it nice and open as we go round. Again, it's just getting a little bit congested here, so I'm going to take that one off in there, just snip that one off. Which just taking just the odd small one off really just starts to open it up a bit. So that one probably doesn't need much more taking off. And I think, as I say, little and often is the way to do it, rather than leave it 10 years and then prune it really hard, because then you'll regret it. So I'm just going to wander around the orchard now and just take bits and bobs off to make sure everything's as it should be. Right, what I'm going to do here, I've got something that I feel is getting very congested now up here, because we've got this one that's been pruned to there, it's growing back into the centre, we've got this ugly stub in there. So what I'm going to do with these is take these out a little bit harder, so I'm going to get my loppers for that. The secateurs aren't big enough to do it. What we shouldn't do is ever strain the secateurs, so if it's going to be too thick, either use a pair of loppers. So what I want to do here is I'm going to cut that one off to there, get rid of all of that because it's growing into the centre, and this one is growing out. So I'm going to cut that one there, just take that back a little bit more in fact. So that one's coming out altogether. And again, that one there just looks horrible where it's been taking the top out in the summer, so we can take that one out. That feels too thick even for these. So what I'm going to do with that one is use a saw. Always try to make the job as easy as we can for ourselves. So it's just a case of pruning that one out, and there it drops to the ground. So we've taken two biggish pieces out there, but it's opened that up nicely, so again we get much better airflow. What we also need to look at is to make sure the tree is in balance, and as I stand over there and look at this tree, there's more growth growing this way than there is that way. And to me, when I look at it, this piece here is growing higher. It's going to get to the point where I'm not going to be able to reach the apples, so I can encourage it to grow a little bit more this way. So occasionally you can take out a thicker branch, use a saw for it, and always cut back to an outward growing horizontal branch like this one, so that you're not just cutting off to a stump. So again, we're just going to gradually with the saw take that off to there. I can feel it going, rocking, so just slow it down. So that's going to go out, and it's cleared a nice area there, and it means the tree now isn't going to go up as much, and it just balances up a little bit more. And likewise, I could do a similar thing with this one here. It's one of those jobs, the more you look at it, the more you can see to shape them up. So again, just hold that, give it a bit of a wobble, and away it comes. And now if I stand here, I can see I've got a more open shape there, and it's just taken out these tall big pieces there, and I'm encouraging the growth to go slightly more sideways, so it gives us a nice open shape. When you finish the pruning in the garden of whatever fruit it is, make sure that you give your knives and your secateurs or pruners a wipe over. Methylated spirits is ideal. Just get some on a cloth, wipe the blade, and that gets rid of any sap, but also any viruses that could be transmitted from tree to tree. And we've been looking at apples. It's ideal time to prune pears, but if you've got plums or damsons in the garden, don't prune those at this time of the year. We should only ever prune those when the sap is rising and they're in leaf. So we're going to wait until probably May to do those. So even if you've got a big branch that you feel needs to be taken off a plum tree, leave it, because you could be doing more harm than good. It's amazing how much the birds eat at this time of the year, whether you're putting nuts out, seed, whatever, they love it. But it's important to keep them really well fed, because they're our friends in the garden. They eat all sorts of weed seeds and pests and aphids and things, so we need to look after the birds. They make a bit of a mess though, and bird feeders can become a breeding ground for all sorts of diseases and bacteria. It gets really horrible, and I've just scraped the old out of there, but it's horrible. So what we need to do every now and again is to take the feeders down and give them a really good wash. So I've got some hot soapy water with a little bit of disinfectant in there, so we can get rid of all that horrible gunge. That if we leave it, it's, as I say, a breeding ground. It will go all mouldy and horrible. And the last thing we want to do is poison our birds in the garden. So give them a good wash, get rid of all that gunge, let them drain off and be completely dry. And once they've dried off, you can top them up again and the birds will be happy. So I would aim to do that probably once a month, once every 6 weeks. And the other thing we need to do is make sure that the bird drinkers are also given a wash and sterilised as well. So that's much better, isn't it? The birds are never here, are they, when you want them to do the washing? So what I'm going to do is let that drain on the wall, do the seed one here, and then I can top them up.
Can you put them in a dishwasher?
You could, but I don't think Mrs. Fish would be very happy if I did. So I think a bucket of soapy water is probably safer for me. So there you go, that'll keep the birds happy for a bit longer, and everything's nice and clean for them now. So thank you for watching Pots and Trowels this week. Hope you've enjoyed it. We'll be back next week, but in the meantime, tell all your friends about us and keep gardening.